This is the Mobile Philosopher Podcast. It's a lucky dip of weird distractions taken from the work of philosophers living and dead. If you enjoy this, I hope you'll also enjoy the Mobile Philosopher books, which are available in the usual places. Today's episode, Imagining Things. We are all stuck to a large spinning ball as it loops around an inconceivably larger ball of fire. It's so much weirder than being on the back of a giant elephant or turtle, as some mythologies have supposed. Richard Feynman drew the conclusion that the imagination of nature is far, far greater than the imagination of man. It raises the question, what role should the imagination play in our attempts to understand the world around us? We're usually ambivalent on this question. Consider trying to work out whether one friend would get on well with another. You try to envisage them seated next to each other and the mood that might create. Based on this imaginative exercise, suppose you decide that they would hate each other. Here it seems you're using your imagination to form a belief. And it's not an irrational technique. Later, after their feud has ruined the party, you might say, with justification, I knew that would be a disaster. However, we can think of other examples where we don't rate the imagination as a legitimate source of knowledge. Consider a husband who, when he envisages his wife at the conference, is convinced she'll cheat on him. You might say, you're just imagining things, meaning that he lacks proper evidence for his suspicions. So here's the question. In what ways, if any, can the imagination improve our knowledge? Some philosophers think that a good way to start this investigation is to look at similarities and differences between imagination on the one hand and perception on the other. After all, everyone agrees surely that perception is a source of knowledge about the world. For example, when it comes to perception, you can uncover surprises by taking a closer look. Suppose, for example, you take a tin of beans out of a cupboard and, after failing to open it in the usual way, realise that it's one of those disguised safes. You have to unscrew it and it's got money inside. Jean-Paul Sartre maintained that a crucial feature of imagination is that these sorts of surprises are impossible. If you imagine a tin of beans, it really is a tin of beans that you're imagining. You cannot properly focus your mind's eye and realise to your surprise that you were really imagining a safe. There are surprises in imagination, of course, but they're of a different kind. Fantasizing, you might be shocked by who pops up, but you don't find out who is involved by inspecting your internal imagery. Once brought before the mind, an imagined scene can hold no surprises, since it was created by you and has no reality beyond what you put into it. It must therefore be impossible to improve our knowledge of the world by exercising our imagination. When the suspicious husband imagines his wife's trip, he only dwells on images of his own making. Likewise, cosmologies based on imagination only tell us about ourselves, not about a much more alien external world. But what about your two friends and the imagined party? Didn't that show us that we can get knowledge through imagination? Let's go back to that. So imagine again them coming into the room and taking seats next to each other. According to recent work by the philosopher Amy Kind, what you're about to do is run a sort of mental simulation. As with all simulations, the ingredients are known about beforehand. So in this imagined scene, what we've got are two characters, a man and a woman, and they're your inventions, right? She's quick-witted, let's suppose, because you've imagined her that way, and he's shy for the same reason. However, and here's the crucial point, even though this inner simulation that you're about to run was created by you and is populated with your creations, that doesn't mean that you can't learn something by running this inner simulation. A simulation can give you surprising knowledge. That's something we've had to focus on a lot recently, right? If you recall all the competing models simulating the spread of viruses through a population. In those models, the ingredients and their qualities were created by scientists, and they were understood beforehand. Right? The program was understood beforehand. Yet when the simulation was run, there were surprises. For a less grim illustration, think about the 2020 Grand National, which was replaced by a simulation of the race. The model was meant to be thorough enough to give us evidence of which horse would have won. So, according to Amy Kind, the imagination is a kind of mental simulation, and it's therefore possible to use the imagination to learn about the world and not just about ourselves. When you imagine the party, the imagined scene with its host of characters is created by you, but the qualities you give these characters constrain the workings of an inner simulation. The simulation unfolds before the mind's eye, and the results can be surprising and informative. You think, yeah, they're definitely not going to get on. So in this way, perhaps the imagination can be a source of knowledge about the external world. If you enjoy these podcasts, I hope you will also enjoy the Mobile Philosopher books, which are available in all the usual places, and you can find out more about them at themobilephilosopher.com. Thanks for listening.